If I saw another day, only to scream into the night. Nothing ever tries to change, even if I want to realize. 'Cause I've been sitting here, same old ways, taking off without the same mistake. Darling, when you go away, it won't be as simple for you.
Yo guys, it's Old Man G here, RDS, back again with another takeover stream. I obviously joined here. Apologies obviously for the delay, a few technical issues behind the scenes. But before we get into it, remember guys, if you are new to the channel, to like, share and subscribe to Red Devil Studio. Follow us on Twitter, We Are United X. Smash the notification button for latest Manchester United news and more. Obviously, we've got some takeover talk. I normally wouldn't go live with all this sort of stuff, but obviously my good friend at Tom Journalist is here for some good old takeover goss. Shout out to those who are watching late and who will be watching in the morning as well, because I know a lot of people do watch these streams, obviously, after the event. So before we get into the news, Tom, how are you doing? You okay? Tom, are you there? Okay, he's not with me. Okay, he is here. He's in the chat. He'll be back in a second. We've had a few technical issues, but like I think he'll be back. So I'll just start with the show, go show, and then we'll just wait as Tom comes back. So essentially, we're obviously going to talk about the Beckham and obviously the links with Qatar. Obviously, that's a big thing right now with reports that Qatar are saying that they're going to potentially use Beckham as ambassador, as well as Sir Gill as an ambassador, the likes of Sheikh Ferguson, etc. There's also talk about Sheikh Jassim not ruling out a final bid. Sheikh Jassim not ruling out a final bid for Manchester United Football Club as well. And finally, Ineos, how far Ineos in the takeover with the bid? Are they going to basically continue to pursue? Because we know obviously that Sir Jim Ratcliffe has altered or is planning to alter his bid regarding the 25% shares, 1% stake in Manchester United minority bid, in order to be able to somehow get a stake in Manchester United. So yeah, that's sort of basically where we are. I'm going to check on Tom to see if Tom's with us. Tom, are you there? Can you hear me? Let's see, is he there? Right. Okay. Well, he's not responding, so hopefully he comes back to us soon. So what I'll do while I'm waiting for Tom, apologies for this, guys, is I will give you at least give you the update that Tom actually gave me that I'll share with you guys, and then hopefully when Tom gets back, Tom can actually sort of elaborate on basically what's been going on in the world of Manchester United regarding the takeover from his sources. So this is the update that Tom actually gave me, and hopefully, like I said, he'll be back to elaborate on this. So it says here, so sale update. Sheikh Jassim, obviously get your questions in about the takeover as well, guys. Sheikh Jassim's 9-2 Foundation has been in contact with two mainstream ex-Manchester United players over taking an ambassador role within the club. David Beckham has been approached 2 months ago regarding becoming a club ambassador or senior director, with the latter leaning more towards Beckham's preference due to him wanting a decision-making role should he partner with the Qataris. And obviously, as you know, in the interview, David Beckham, Jones is going well. the interview with David Beckham, saying that that he knows people, his connections and stuff like that. You know, that's what David Beckham was saying. So I'm just going to continue reading. So that's to bear that in mind. David Beckham is set to be in line for a role in Manchester United. However, isn't a part of the bidding group to buy the football club, so he won't have any shares within the club should the Qataris take over. With the Qataris also planning to retain Sir Alex Ferguson as the leading club ambassador, although goodness me, this guy is quite old right now, so we'll see what happens. And you know, unfortunately, obviously his wife passed away as well recently, so you know we've got to bear that in mind as well. You know. With the Qataris planning to retain Sir Ferguson, yes, Ferguson is a leading club ambassador and potentially give David Gill a leading dictatorship role. Direct David Gill a leading directorship role on the board, creating an experienced guard mixed with ambitious owners, with the aim of taking Manchester United back to the top of world football. Sheikh Jassim's camp are very calm, said one source close to the group about their fifth bid. That they put on the table, as they feel it's a fair price for a football club like Manchester United, but they have insisted that they won't rule out one final bid to buy the club. This comes after our last reporting, obviously with Tom's journalism, that Sir Jim Ratcliffe was open to restructuring his offer to buy a 25% stake in the club with a long-term buyout, put and call option to buy shares of the club over years to come then eventually to control the football club, which is basically what it seems Sir Jim Ratcliffe is wanting to do, the avenue that he's wanting to go down. That seems to be, you know, what he's wanting to go down. The reporting hasn't made the Qataris flinch. So this news, Qatar, fine. They're not going to do anything radical. It hasn't made them flinch to make a new offer due to the Glazer family still not making a confirmed decision of what sell option they wish to proceed with the Qataris not taking the bait regarding Ineos restructuring his bids. I think that's a key thing, really. I mean, it's some chats. Oh, I'm back. Oh, Tommy, you're back. You there?
Yeah. You can go anyway.
The show all by myself, buddy. I've literally just been reading what you were saying. Kevin just in the fact they haven't released the yearly finance is significant. Tom is like the Pink Jones boots, and hey, so Tom, just basically, because obviously I've been what you're saying, but can you just basically just give us a summary? I think first and foremost of the Beckham and Qatar story, and then how Sheikh Jassim and the Qataris are reacting to the news coming from Ineos, that type of thing.
Yeah, well, with the Sheikh Jassim sort of update, if you like, that came out from a couple of days ago, was that 9-2 Foundation, which obviously is the creatory business that Sheikh Jassim has created with partners within the bidding group to buy Manchester United, and that's effectively what they've been using as the business to buy the club, in the same way that, you know, Ratcliffe has used Ineos to buy, or tried to buy anyway, Manchester United in the bidding process. It's just two different businesses pitting against each other. And there was a couple of reports that came out, it would have been 5 or 6 months ago, really, that were pinpointing that the 9-2 Foundation had been set up and created on the basis of it was a connection towards the class of 92. And that Sheikh Jassim's bidding group, should they be successful, they wanted to incorporate leading figures who had either been directors or ambassadors at United, or they were more basing it towards ex-players. And there was a pool of ex-players that Qatar have relationships with as it stands right now, because they're ambassadors for the tourist board or for the actual country. So you have it with David Beckham. They brought in David Beckham to be a leading figure and an ambassador for the Qatar World Cup. They did that. So the relationship is already built there between Qatari royals and David Beckham. You have the same thing that you have with Rio Ferdinand, who's a country ambassador for Qatar, who has the connections within, obviously, Manchester United, Qatar, and he also has a media role as well with TNT Sports. So he has a whirlwind of a sort of lifestyle. And at the end of the day, the guy, in one case, Rio Ferdinand knows sort of the media scrutiny, and he knows the more recent time of playing in United in the era, toward the back end of Sir Alex Ferguson's reign. And then you also have the club sort of structure inside of it, with what David Beckham's done with Inter Miami. And I think Inter Miami really is a brilliant story when you think about it, that him and partners in the US, they took a football club on and they made it their own, really. He was able to buy into a football club, invest a lot of money into it, along with some business partners that he picked up along the way, and said, let's build a team. Where should we build it? Let's build it in Miami. And they built into Miami, and they suddenly took a club that they invested, I think it was upwards of 50 to 60 $1 million into. And suddenly now, when you take and revolve it to present time now, it's worth $1 billion, effectively. That's the sort of range that Inter Miami's valuation is worth as a club. So David Beckham, from a club structuring point of view, he knows how to run a football club because he does it in Inter Miami. And yet, we can say it for what it is. Inter Miami is not Manchester United. We can understand that. But he's got the experience, he's got the credentials. And at the end of the day, that's what will stand out to Sheikh Jassim and the bidding group, is that, well, we've basically got David Beckham in our pocket because we've used him as an ambassador for the World Cup. He's an ex-United player, and he also owns a team. So he knows what it takes to run a team. And you can put all the principles and the factors in. He's a United fan. He played for the club for years, and he's got that sort of connection with the football club that plays on the heartstrings to a lot of United fans. And really, he could be the fronting force for the Qataris and their bid. But the one thing that we uncovered anyway, that I heard you read out anyway, was from the report that I'd sent, was that the way that it had worked is that they don't want him to be a part of the process where they're acquiring the club. That's where, say, the misreporting came from a couple of months ago, where they wanted to get ex-players involved. They want ex-players involved should they acquire the club. That's where the misinformation's come from. Should they acquire the club, after that, then that's when they want to have people in place. And it's coming to the point where it was 2 months ago, they'd contacted, I know of at least 2 mainstream ex-United players that they've contacted, one of which I can't currently disclose this time. I'm not going to disclose, based upon I haven't doubly checked the name to see if it sticks. Whereas with David Beckham, I can safely sit here and say he has been contacted by the Qatari bidding group to say, look, if we be successful in buying Manchester United, we want you to be a front club-face figure. And we either want you involved internally on the board and be a director, or we want you to be an ambassador for the football club as the playing side. Alongside, you have it with, say, Sir Alex Ferguson. So you have a player and you have the manager. Those two can play hand in hand in terms of brand appeal towards United. And David Beckham, the footballer, and David Beckham, the personality, well, you've got 2 different characters there. So it plays together, really. And at the end of the day, in the way that it's working, is that the Qataris are setting up the, I guess, pedestals of that. Should they be successful, this is what they want. They want David Beckham involved. They want potentially another player involved. They want to have people who know the football club and love it for what it was when they was players to have involvement in the football club. And at the end of the day, when you name it 92 Foundation and you aim it as an umbrage to the class of 92, and in the year that Sheikh Jassim says and he instigates that he was a United fan, he became a United fan. He followed the football club, and at the end of the day, you got to the 99 final and 99 final, and we know what happened there with the history with the treble and that. It plays on the heartstrings to Sheikh Jassim individually, but also the Qataris' motto, as I said and reiterated before, they was involved with the Red Knights consortium group to try and potentially bid for United in 2010, but the Glazer family didn't want to sell then. And then a year later, then the same Qataris that were looking at maybe partnering with the Red Knights to buy United went and bought PSG. So you can see the connection there. They've waited a long time to potentially get this football club, and now they're in a position where they have the opportunity to get it. And then, again, I guess moving on to what you said about with Sir Jim Ratcliffe and the Qatari sort of reaction to that, they're calm about this. They've said for well over a month that they've never feared the Ratcliffe bid, based upon that he doesn't have a lot of leverage with the minority stakeholders. That's their understanding, because he's on a tightrope. Yes, he can say that the minority investors can say that they're willing to cut a deal with him and do it, but you've got to agree on that deal. That's the difference. Saying that you're prepared to negotiate a deal and actually having it signed, sealed, and agreed is different. And the Qataris feel like Ratcliffe will struggle to please the Glazer family with an offer. Then he's got to sort out the minority investors. And then also in all of that, he's then got to try and take the reins and run United. The Qataris feel like for him and for Ineos, who relatively are new to the sporting world, albeit they've been in it for quite some time, they're new to this sort of level of a team that is so global and worldwide. They've never bought a team of the size and stature of United, but this is the difference maker. And that's why with the Sheikh's camp is that they don't necessarily feel that the restructuring to buy 25% in United is going to do a lot to please the Glazer family. Even if it means that he buys 25% now and then he buys them out potentially at a later date. Because the way that the Qataris look at it is, if you wanted to sell 25% to somebody, you would have sold it to one of the minority investors already. We wouldn't even be still in this process right now. So Ratcliffe suddenly changing his stance to go down to 25. It doesn't make a lot of sense why the Glazer family would be interested in that offer unless there is an agreement on a set price or a set date that they have to be bought out by. That suits the Glazer family. But as we know with the Glazer family, if you don't meet their demands and what they want, you don't get anywhere in the process. That's why nobody's bought the football club right now, because they've not met the asking price. And it might be a case of with Ratcliffe, he might have a debt. He might have, say, I want to buy United out in 3-4 years. The Glazer family could think, we don't want that. We want to be bought out within 12 months, or we want to be bought out within 18 months. We want to be bought out a lot quicker than that, or we want to be bought out in 6 years' time, or something like that. Like, the Glazer family could put any sort of date in mind, and the way that they've run the process, at the end of the day, if you don't meet what they expect, you don't get anywhere. I think it's been the clear motto that we've seen. So the Qataris, they're not taking the bait regarding the Ineos restructuring of its bids. They know what they believe United's worth. They've put in the fifth and final bid at what they say is a fair price and is a premium price to buy for Manchester United based upon the share price and the club's actual finances that they've seen. And then the overall work that it would take to restructure and rebuild United after purchase. And effectively, what the Qataris have come to is that they're not buying that Ineos and Ratcliffe are actually a competitor. They believe there's more chance, as I said before a couple of streams ago, was that the Glazer family would rather not sell than sell to Ratcliffe, because he's not offering them much different to what the minority investors are offering them right now. They've not taken any of his other offers, so I think you can probably maybe dismiss them right now for the time being, unless he wants to improve upon them. So then dropping to 25, he's basically a minority investor then. He's a minority stake. He wants to be a minority stakeholder, for which the Glazer family have had, again, 9 months to pick one of those offers, and they never have done. So there's really no difference to that, and that's why the Qataris are so calm about it, because they're looking at the environment and the landscape and thinking, well, we're the only people here who's actually got the money to buy the club. Ratcliffe, either he doesn't have the money to do it or he doesn't want to. And it's one or the other. And you'd probably lean maybe towards the first one, is that he just doesn't have the money to do it. Or at least not right now. That's why he wants a sustained long-term buyout with put and call options where he can call, the Glazers can put a price and he can pay. That's effectively what he would want. But the Qataris in saying it that they've not flinched to the news that Ratcliffe's restructuring his bids. And the reason why they're not flinching is, well, the Glazer family haven't said anything. So until they say something, why do we need to do anything differently to what we've been doing? Just sit and wait. The Qataris have made it clear they'll pay a fair price for United, but they won't just pay any price. and they believe what they've bid for the 5th time is what they believe is what United is worth market value, with B, a bit of premium on top of it to say this is the market value, and then this little bit extra. That's what we are prepared to go to the strengths and the lengths towards. But again, it might just come down to where eventually you just have to pay what it takes. And whether they're prepared to do it or not, well, they've never said they will, but they've also never said that they won't. They've remained stooped and tight-lipped on that. So at the end of the day, if they feel like that they can get the better deal by waiting, they're going to wait.
Thanks for that update, Tom. Really appreciate it. And it's really useful. That's really useful. I just want to pick out a few things in the message, obviously, that you sent me. So you mentioned about the idea of potentially giving David Gill a leading directorship role on the board. Now, last time I checked, David Gill hasn't been involved in Manchester United for quite some time. I'm correct. Is that I'm correct?
He's been a sort of minority director in the background, but he's basically been a sort of a transitioner, if you like, from the years previous to the years now.
Fine. So with that name being mentioned, like, why would the Qataris want to bring David Gill more forward into this whole process, do you think?
Probably this isn't knowledge, but probably, if I had to guess, really, it's based upon the expertise. They look at world football right now. Getting a top-class CEO is hard because the best ones are at the big clubs, and the big clubs won't let those people go. So the Qataris will look at it, well, if they had it their way, they would have Nasser Al-Khalifi be the CEO or club president of Manchester United. But he can't. That's the problem. He can't do it. So, because of his affiliation with Paris Saint-Germain and the distancing that they'll have to do with that, he can't influence what happens at Manchester United. However, the Qataris would wish him probably to do so. Sheikh Jassim won't do it because he doesn't know the football landscape. He's just a fan and he wants to buy and he wants to invest. That's him and his group. So they want somebody with expertise. And David Gill, I'd be surprised if he comes back to be the CEO or the chief executive at United, because I think the Qataris will choose somebody that they believe is fit for purpose, either is a Qatari themselves and has worked within Qatar's, government or mainstream financial networks, or maybe even with the actual sovereign wealth fund itself, or they're going to choose a leading director out there in world football and they'll pay what it takes to get them. But getting an innovator and getting a top CEO in world football right now who knows the football and also the business is hard to do. I mean, United let one of them go in Ralph Rangnick, so it's hard to get those innovators into the football club at the time. But the thing with David Gill, the Qataris, I think, anyway, believe would be looking at is that if you can get David Gill and you can get Sir Alex Ferguson, you've got the mould of what made United successful for so many years. Basing it maybe over, a decade and a half. That's what made United successful. David Gill ran the business operations of the football club and he made sure that the right people was in place and in principle to sufficiently supply Sir Alex Ferguson, the manager of Manchester United, with what he needs to then get the best performance and ultimately the success that United had for a sustained period over so many years. So effectively, the Qataris will look at this and think, if we can get some of the old guard, if you like, get the band back together, Sir Alex Ferguson wouldn't play a role within the day-to-day running or decision-making at United. That's different. He would just be a face of United, for which he is right now. They just wouldn't want to change that. But having someone like a David Gill, who's younger, he's had the experience of being in the hot seat at a big club like Manchester United, having somebody like that right now who could lead the group or the board for now in a senior director's role, or as I quoted anybody, a leading director's role, a senior director's role, if you have that person there who can do that for you now, who's been there and done it, that's fine. You could then potentially keep David Gill on in some capacity internally, or you just leave him as, if you like, a caretaker sort of role, until you get the guy that you want. It gives the ownership group time, but it also gives them the, I guess, positivity and the know-how that they've got somebody that can do it because they've done it before. So effectively, it gives them the logistics of, well, we know what we want and we know what we want, but it's going to take us time to get the person that we want in place. But while we do that, let's have somebody who knows it. And people will say it's jobs for the boys, it's whatever.
Yeah.
Like
Okay.
David Gill knows the football club. He ran it for a sustained period of time while United was majorly successful. So I think really in a lot of United fans' cases, he's got quite a bit of credit in the bank.
Fine.
And if Sir Alex Ferguson came back as manager and United were playing the way that they are under Eric Ten Hag, I don't think a lot of people would be bowing for Sir Alex Ferguson to be sacked because he's got credit in the bank for what he's done for the football club before. So I think with David Gill, as I guess the final sort of pinpointing on that would be, if you get him in, it would be a short-term solution to a bigger fixing problem. And that's why I say, if there wasn't the situation with PSG, Nasser Al-Khalifi would be the CEO of Manchester United. I can almost guarantee and assure that for any United fan out there. But because he has the affiliation with PSG still, and he is the president of that football club, and he has the connection to the Sovereign Wealth Fund of Qatar, he can't do it. So, if in many circumstances, they need another person who's fit for purpose, but they can also trust to lead the ownership and effectively make them money that will just reinvest into United, but also will actually give them what they want, the ambition that they want, which is to win. They need somebody who's going to do that for them, and getting somebody like that in world football right now, honestly, it's like a needle in a haystack. And you strike gold sometimes with what, say, Manchester City did with Mubarak and with, Soriano and Tixi. You've got that sort of trio there. Or you can have it Staling where you have Daniel Levy, you have Fabio Paratici, who had all the problems that he brought with him, the baggage that he brought with him to Italy, and then he was banned as a sporting director. And you get the gist of where I'm coming from. It can either blossom or it can bomb out.
No, exactly. I don't disagree with that. Kevin says a question for you, Tom has as does Tom think that something like Apple, Amazon swoop in last minute to buy Manchester United?
Well, when the Qatar World Cup was on, these rumours actually came out, didn't they, about Apple and Amazon and everything?
They did.
There was a funny story anyway that a lot of the reports, anyway, people I'd spoken to close to the Premier League and everything, they'd had a couple of notices on their, if you like, inbox or desk from CEO football club owners, and they was complaining about the competitiveness of the Premier League if United was taken over by, and I'm using the analogy with Apple in this case, a trillionaire company, because they didn't believe the fairness and the actual logistics of the Premier League would be sustainable if the biggest club in England, financially and commercially like United, was then to be taken over by a trillionaire company. They just said it wouldn't be fair. That's effectively what they said. And the Premier League vetoed it, and it sort of died down from there because Apple weren't ever interested in buying in United. And in terms of a last-minute swoop to buy United, to answer Kevin's question, I don't think it would ever happen for an Amazon or an Apple, because tech companies don't necessarily buy football clubs. They buy the TV rights to run games for it, which makes them money, and they have the revenue streams from it. Apple, in this case, I'd be surprised in the next 5 to 10 years if they didn't buy into the TV rights business. And they was in the same boat as Amazon. They have, say, 5 or 6 games per season. You have it where you have, broadcasters and, tech companies or, subscription streamers. They buy in and they bid for the same TV rights year after year. Or the Premier League do cut price deals with companies to then sell the rights to. So you have it, for example, with the partnership they have with TNT Sports, with Sky Sports. They're looking at branching potentially with DAZN. Then you have it also with, say, if you had it with Amazon, where they have the Christmas festive period, where they have 10 games that they might be able to broadcast. Apple, I'd be shocked if they don't try and break into that market at some point. But buying a football club with Amazon's sort of, in particular towards Amazon anyway, buying Manchester United right now wouldn't make sense based upon they're in the media business. They're not in the actual competitiveness of sports. They don't own sports. Jeff Bezos doesn't own sports teams. Amazon doesn't have investments in sports. So suddenly to change your tune and go to that, I think it'd be a little bit different.
Fair enough. So let's just quickly move on. Again, just going to what you were saying. Obviously, guys, if you're in the chat, if you have any questions, obviously let me know, and let Tom know. It'd be good. We'll be live for just a little bit longer. Because it's about what time's in the UK? It's almost 20 to midnight in the UK. So bear with us. So you also talk about the fact that obviously that the idea that Sheikh Jassim, that a final bid, that they put obviously a bid on the table, the fifth bid. They think it's good enough, but they've insisted that they won't rule out a final bid for the club. What do you think that means?
I think that means that if it comes to it, don't probably quote me on it because this isn't from knowledge, but if I had to give my opinion of the people that I speak to, I think the knowledge and the sort of signalling that would come from is that they have the money to pay what it takes, but they just wanted to try and get a better deal. I think that's the long story short of it. And when you're a businessman or you're a banker or you've got a financial background, you never pay the asking price. You never do. You always negotiate for anything. If you go to buy a house, you don't suddenly ask the owner what the price of the house is and then pay, as soon as they're there, sold. You don't. You negotiate it. You say, this is my offer, let's negotiate it. Can you come down a bit? What's the lowest that you can do? What strengths are you prepared to go to? What can you offer me externally? Can you offer me, like it was rumoured ages ago and it was falsified that Sheikh Jassim had offered the Glazer family to host NFL games in Qatar and certain things like that, like as an additional bonus to it. But in particular with it regarding, them bidding for a final time, it would effectively that the Qataris will look at it as, we have the money to pay the asking price, yes. But it's not valued at that asking price. So why should we just pay it because somebody tells us to pay it? We've not worked, as a nation and pulled together as thousands of people as a sovereign wealth fund to make up, a rounded number of over 300, billion pounds or US dollars to just suddenly pay what anybody tells us to pay. That's the one thing that the Qataris, with any investment that they've done, they've never paid the exact price for anything. They never paid the exact prices that they did to build the Shard. They negotiated contractors and constructors down on the negotiation to build that in London. They never paid the asking price for what they did for a lot of the property and development that they did in Mayfair in London. They never paid the accurate figures and fees for Harrods. So really, I think you can get the gist and the logistics of what I'm saying. Yeah, you have an asking price in mind, but they don't tend to pay the asking price. But the only thing that I will say in this case is it's Manchester United. It's a brand, it's a football club that doesn't come around very often, if ever. And that's why I think when you have the opportunity to buy it, you've got to really take it. And the same people, as I said before in the story that I reiterated before, these same people involved in this bid were prepared to partner to try and buy it in 2010. And they were unsuccessful because a lot of the Red Knights Consortium group couldn't agree on who wanted what stake and how they would run the club day to day. And it fizzled out from there. And I already run the story before that Sheikh Jassim was one of those people who was at that table when the Qataris were looking to partner. He was in the room. He was one of the voices in that bidding group from the Qataris to say, we want in on this. We want a bit of United. It's the biggest club in United. It's the biggest club in England. And many people had said in 2010, it was one of the biggest in world football because they were competing on the stage. So really and ultimately, United have the factor of that It's the brand, it's the football club, and at the end of the day, it's a project. And if you look at it from this perspective, you have the biggest club in England that needs a new stadium, it needs new training facilities, the love, care, and attention that a structure of a football club needs to then build a winning team and a mentality that a manager can thrive in, the players can thrive in, but also facilities that both the manager and the players can actually utilise to their best. You need the best in class, as Gary Neville would say. You need the best in class. And the Qataris can offer that, not only from the financial aspect, but as I said before, the smart and intelligent people. You don't rack up that much money in a sovereign wealth fund without knowing what you're doing at the end of the day. And as I've always said before, Sheikh Jassim's father, HBJ, built that hedge fund, built the sovereign wealth fund up to that total with the then Emir of Qatar. He built it up in a partnership, the two of them. That's his father. And you're telling me his father doesn't have access to some of that money that's effectively, and if we're being honest, rightfully his. He built it for the country, so he's going to have a lot of it that he could utilise to himself. So at the end of the day, will the Qataris bid one final time? If it comes push to shove, and the Glazers went and said, we're negotiating with Sir Jim, he's our choice, he's our bidder, they might just say, fuck it, here's 6. We want it, here's 6. We'll give you what you want. And then if the Glazer family turn it down, well, then the Qataris can always fall back on the sword of, well, they never really wanted to sell Manchester United. We give them what they wanted in the end, and they still didn't. They still said no.
Well, I think this is the thing, and I mean, you know, what we'll sort of, you know, I guess talk about sort of now, is that, you know, for me as a United fan and seeing this whole thing unfold, I think it's reassuring as someone who, you know, I personally prefer Qatar not because I have any issue with Sir Jim, but because I don't like the whole minority involvement, keeping the Glazers, etc. But what I would say is that it's reassuring that Qatar have not definitively ruled out a final bid, but also it's interesting that, you know, I think the thing to me that gets me with this whole thing all the time is that, you know, Glazers have not responded to Sir Jim's bid at all. And Sir Jim seems to have given more flexibility, because everyone always says, oh, the Glazers want Sir Jim, but I've never understood. It's like Sir Jim has given the Glazers more options to stay and for investment than Qatar. Qatar have said, listen, we want full sale, that's it, etc. So Jim said, you know, I'm happy to keep you guys. I can give you this for the amount of the club, or I can give you by 69% a certain amount. And now he's saying I can be a minority holder. So it's like, even though Sir Jim appears to have given all these different options, the Glazers still haven't responded to it. And I don't know what people think in the chat. I don't know what you think, Tom, but like, is the main reason why because they are still, because they're greedy, they are still they're effectively using Sir Jim and the threat of these things to get Qatar to pay a higher amount. Because it almost feels like with this whole thing, it was like literally a week ago, or just above a week, it was Ineos have this thing, Sir Jim's trying to break the deadlock, do this, and then, but we don't hear anything from the Glazers. Or negotiation, or they're being contacted, or Rain contacting these guys because of it. And then now we hear this stuff from Sir Jim and Beckham and all the rest of it. So, I mean, I don't know what you think about that. Like, what's the situation here?
Well, I guess to give the context of it, whenever the Glazers have negotiated on the Ratcliffe side of the bid, they've used Rain. They've spoken with Sir Jim Ratcliffe previously, but during the whole process, they haven't like personally met in person. They've not even sort of clarified to each other. The Glazers have almost hid behind Rain on trying to negotiate with Ratcliffe around the solutions. They've done the same thing with the minority investors that want to buy a 20% stake, 15, 10, 5, whatever percent that they want to buy out of United's and the Glazer family's shares. which would then ultimately still give the Glazers control of the club and they'd still be the owners, but it just means they'd have extra capital to hand. The best way that you can look at that is that the Glazer family have almost hid behind Rain for Ratcliffe and the minority investors who want to buy in, but the Qatari bid is different, and it's different because they instigated something that they haven't done with any other group. They went to Nasser Al Khalifa, as I said before, and said to Nasser Al Khalifa, we want you to speak to contacts back in Qatar. We want you to speak to Sheikh Jassim, and we want to get him to improve his deal and improve his offer. We want you to be a part of this and play the middleman role. Now, you know, Nasser Al Khalifa himself, he said, no, I don't wish to be a participant in it. I'm not involved in the bidding group. I have no knowledge of the bid. It's a private individual bid. But, guys, he's got to say that. The guy who's behind, you know, QSI, who's the sporting arm and does all the sporting investments for Qatar, if he doesn't know that there's a bid going in for a football club, which is a part of sports, you're like, G must take his glasses off and go and hand him to him. Because you're not pulling the wool over anybody's eyes. At the end of the day, Nasser Al Khalifa has some influence and involvement within not what's going on in terms of bidding and what telling the Qatari group in particular or the individuals what to bid, but he can offer his services and his logistics to say, well, on a European scale, this is what United's worth. This is what United's worth to the Champions League. This is what United's worth to the Premier League. He knows the figures. He knows how it works because he's one of the most influential figures within football. Probably behind maybe the FIFA president and UEFA presidents. He's probably one of the most well-known names in football behind those two. So at the end of the day, when we want to cut through it, if you want to say for will the Qataris bid again on all the logistics of it, when we've gone down the road that, well, the Qataris will only pay what they believe is a fair price and yada, yada, and so forth. But if it comes to it, they could just say, here's the six and, you know, win or lose. We did what the Glazer family wanted in the end, so they can always hide behind the sword. When the Glazer family instigated that contact, it's funny because then, I think it was either 48 hours or 72 hours later, the Sheikh Jassim camp and group put in their fifth bid. I think it was on the Monday that the reporting that anyway that we got the reporting. I can't remember because it was a couple of months ago. So jogging my memory there, I think it was either on a Sunday or a Monday that we had the reporting, and then we put it out there on the Tuesday about the Nasser Al Khalifa story, and then on the Wednesday was when the Qataris then bidded again. So it would have been in that time frame, 48 hours to 72 hours. But in and amongst that, you make contact with the guy. All he's got to do is, you know, phone a couple of people and he can make contact with that group. Or like I say, he's the guy who owns the sport, basically the sporting arm of the country. I think he's going to know the people who's either running the bid or he's going to have some sort of a say in it. But he just can't say that he does publicly. That's the difference. And at the end of the day, the Glazer family haven't hid behind Rain on that aspect. They instigated the contact. They went to them, effectively. They went to him, who ultimately, I think a lot of people can put two and two together. You don't have to be Sherlock Holmes. Then went to the group. So, effectively, it was an indirect middleman exchange. We speak to you. You go home. Tell the people what we want. That's it. Let's try it. Yeah. Tell them to bid again. They bid again. So, effectively, they used the guy as a middleman. But they haven't done that with Ratcliffe. They haven't gone to say Ratcliffe and said, you know, we've spoken before, Jim. How are you doing? Blah, blah, blah. Let's try and cut a deal out here. You know, we want to stay, me and Joel. Are you prepared to buy the siblings out? Are you prepared to do this, that, the other? They've not done that. They've always hid behind Rain on that aspect of the bid. And that's why you can look at it from two perspectives. Either the Qatar bid's what they want and they want to sell out, all of them, but they just want the money and they want the price for it, which is what a lot of people would say. But play devil's advocate, they can also look at it and say, well, let's see what they're prepared to go to and let's hear them out. And then if they don't give us what we want, well, we know what we could have had. So we're not leaving any stone unturned. We've got the answers to a lot of questions. There's no ifs or buts. We knew what we had on the table, and that's the decision that we made. So effectively, around the whole circle of it, the context we've given already. If the Glazer family didn't have a preference, let's put it this way. If Joel and Avram want to stay, why was those two in particular, the leading figures of the Glazer family, they was the people effectively from the family side that made contact with Nasser Al Khalifa. In particular, Avram, because he holds a seat within the UEFA Club Association on behalf of United, because he's one of the senior directors for the club. So you can look at it as many ways as you want. The connection's there. It's already built. I'm just connecting the dots for people. So at the end of the day, use it as a stunt or use it as whatever you want to use it as. There is a preference either to sell fully or to cut a deal. And it's to cut a deal because two of them want to stay in, or because they just want to know, or they want the money that they want. And that's the 6. And unless you give them the 6, they're not budging. And the longer this goes on, G, I guess it summarises to the point, the longer this goes on, why is it going on this long? And why would it take 9 months to make a deal where two of them want to stay? Surely it's a lot more simpler if you want if two of you want to stay, in comparison to all of you wanting to sell. I think that's a lot easier to negotiate and do, because you've just got to please 2 people. The other 4, they can get paid off. That's fine. That's easy. You've just got to please 2 people. Whereas in the Qataris case, they've got to please all 6 of them to sell. So really, that's the harder bargain of the deal. Whereas the Ineos group, they've had 9 months to do a deal, and they're nowhere. They've got nowhere. They haven't got the deal. And now they're looking at re-strategizing to only buy a little bit and then buy over time. There's just so many sort of scenarios in this case, especially from the Ratcliffe side, that it doesn't add up. And I think it culminates all the way up to, I think a lot of people would sit here and probably the nose would start clenching and thinking, are we smelling a bit of bullshit here? Because there can only be one truth. And the one thing that I can always say, as Stephanie puts it anyway with my name, which goes Tom the Truth or whatever, the one thing that's the truth is that the Glazer family want 6 billion. And nobody's made the 6 billion that they want. So you are where you are.
Stephanie has a great question here and says, so Jim publicity stunt to promote himself and his business. Can't understand why he can keep modifying his bid. Surely if that's allowed, other bidders can enter. Thoughts, please, Tom. Thanks.
Well, of course, there's always been the open door. Anybody can bid. If G won the lottery tomorrow, he could bid. We could bid right now. Any of us, we can contact the Rain Group. We bid £1. We can bid, guys, if you wanted to bid. But the end of the day, the Ratcliffe way of looking at it, the spin that they was used on the Chelsea thing was he wasn't serious about buying Chelsea because he didn't go through the right channels to buy it. So you could have looked at the way that he went about trying to buy it and acquire Chelsea and said, well, the way that you tried to buy Chelsea, you come in last minute, you didn't enter the process authoritarianly, and by the time that you'd bidded, there was already somebody who was in line to take over, which was Todd Bowley and Clearlake, which they ended up doing and completing the takeover. So really from that aspect, there wasn't any sort of solution to it from why, in terms of a publicity stunt, that was more so a publicity stunt. With the Manchester United sort of sell process, it's a little bit different because he's gone through the right channels. He's been here from day one when they opened the door. He was the first one to publicly come out and say, I'm bidding to buy United. Even before the Qataris were even here. There was rumours and there was murmurs around certain US investors, and they never followed up upon their proposals. You then had a Finnish entrepreneur businessman in Thomas Iliakis that came out he was a financially wealthy man, but he was in the millions. He wasn't in the billions.
Of course not.
But he had the sort of brand appeal. And if you want to use a PR spin, that was a PR spin for a new tech project that he actually instigated it had only come out about 2 weeks before, and then he'd signed up to say that he wanted to try and bid for United. But with Ratcliffe using it as a PR stunt, you can look at it from that aspect. But if he's using it as a PR stunt, well, there's going to come to some point in Sir Jim Ratcliffe's life where he's going to want to sit there and he's going to want to actually enjoy what he's done and what he's made. And there's going to be some point where if he buys United, he's not buying United for the principle of, I'm not going to take any money out of United. He wants a return on investment at some point. And a lot of new owners, when they buy something big like a football club, they normally look at that after 10 years. After 10 years, we'll have built a new stadium or we'll have done whatever. And then from there, we can take our fair cut or we can sell the football club because we've done everything. That's the model that a lot of owners would look at. So using it as a PR stunt, you can look at it from that perspective, yeah. But it's a big PR stunt. And if it was a PR stunt, he's put a PR stunt on really for, I would say, about 3-4 years. Whenever he come into the fray about that, Sir Jim Ratcliffe, Britain's richest man's a Manchester United fan, like, he's almost, said the same thing for year after year after year. When he's ever done an interview through INEOS or, a business school or a financial sector, he's always reiterated the same thing. I'm a Manchester United fan. I'm a Manchester United fan. Even when I know it sounds really funny to say, even when he was bidding for Chelsea, he still said in an interview, I'm a Manchester United fan. So it's a long charade to keep up if you're using it as a PR stunt. But I understand Stephanie's point. United's a big global brand. It's the biggest football club in the world, many people say. So if you're a wealthy and rich man, who a lot of people will know, and you attach it to that big brand and that big football club, you're going to get a lot of exposure. People are going to, you're probably for maybe 2 or 3 minutes when that report comes out. For people that might not know who Sir Jim Ratcliffe is, he might be the most searched man on Google, on the internet or Google for 30 seconds until there's another trend that comes out or whatever else happens from there. So ultimately, using it as a PR stunt, and will other bidders ever come into the fray? Well, the door's always open. Like, if somebody wakes up tomorrow and says, I'll pay £6 billion to buy Manchester United, then they can do it. There's nothing stopping that person doing it. And we've always used the analogy, me and UG anyway, is that you never know what billionaires think. One day they want to buy an energy drink company. The next day they want to buy an app like Twitter. The next day they want to buy a baseball cap. Then they want to buy a Range Rover. Like, the way of the mind of a billionaire changes every single day. So there's nothing stopping an Elon Musk, a Jeff Bezos, a Bill Gates, whoever, to wake up tomorrow and say, I want to buy United. I want to buy Manchester United. If there's any soccer team that I want to buy Manchester United. So there's nothing stopping somebody doing that. Or, again, you can have one of the minority investors maybe U-turn and do the opposite to what Ratcliffe's doing and say, hey, do you know, instead of us buying 20%, yeah, we want in. We'll buy you all out and we'll pay $6 billion. And if one of those hedge funds did it, they'd sell to that hedge fund. If that was an Elliott Management, a Carlyle Group, Oak Tree Capital or an SSB Partners, if they suddenly turned around and said, no, we'll buy United for 6 and we'll pay it now, the Glazers family would sell straight away because they've met the asking price. It doesn't matter who they sell it to. That's the one thing I've always said with the family. They don't care who they sell it to. If they get the money that they're looking for, they'll sell it. They don't care if there's a legal trajectory to it, like with Ratcliffe. They don't care if there's the, human rights and public scrutiny to it with Qatar. They don't care. If it means that they get the $6 billion, they don't care what process they have to go to get it. They want the 6. And if they don't get the 6, they're not going to sell, which is where we are, like we said. Nobody's met the offer. So we've still got an ongoing process. And, you've got a lot of trajectory within the club where people don't know if they're going to have jobs or not. Amongst that, you have Eric Ten Hag, who's probably there scratching his head thinking, I need some reinforcements in January and I haven't got any money. So
yeah.
It's a really difficult situation for, I think, a lot of people involved at Manchester United.
Do you, as we obviously begin to round things up at the last 5 minutes, and guys, if you have any questions for Tom, get them in last 5 minutes, guys, last 5 minutes. So if you have any questions for Tom, get them in. Do you think that, like, I guess being honest, like, do you think that we're going to get some sort of resolution to this whole thing soon? And by soon, I mean end of the year, beginning of next year. How long do you think that the Glazers are willing to allow this process to drag on?
As long as it takes till they get 6.
That's essentially what I was saying. Yeah.
And I know that's going to sound really cliche, and it's not going to be what a lot of Manchester United fans want to hear or viewers want to hear. But time's not the issue for these people, unfortunately. They aren't under the government scrutiny of a Russian oligarch or anybody like that, so they're not going to be forced to sell. Age is on their side because there's no Glazer family member that's over the age of 70. So age isn't a problem for them. And as far as I'm aware, none of them have health or long-term, debility problems. Even if you want to go that deep and that far, to say like, oh, there's a medical issue with one of them, or suddenly, like when we had the situation with Malcolm Glazer when he suddenly died, and then there was the worry of where the football club would go to, and in his will, he'd inherit, the siblings had all inherited shares of United and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers at the time when they'd made the investments. So their father looked after them effectively, and he set them up for what they have now. So really and ultimately, the family, they've got a big asset for which they have a price in mind, but nobody's wanting to go to that price. They have one person who, I'm not saying it from knowledge, but I believe so, is that they have one person who can pay it, but they're just not paying it. And that's the Qataris. And if, the sort of phrasing that's been with Avram and Joel, if they do want to stay, you've had 9 months, guys. And if you're saying, like we're going to say, G, if this drags on, the more and more the Ratcliffe sort of scenario of him taking over, I think, dwindles, because you've offered them everything.
Exactly.
You've offered them a minority stake. You've offered to buy 69%. You've offered to buy 50, keep 2 in, keeps all 6 in. You've offered literally everything, every option, and then nothing, and you've still not been accepted. So then that dwindles more towards, well, maybe they don't want to stay. Maybe they are just sitting here and waiting until somebody pays the £6 billion that they want, and we're off. See you later. But they understand it from the Glaze family anyway, is that the one thing that they understood, and Rain, when they first instigated that Manchester United was for sale and they'd advertised it, was Rain expected one sovereign wealth fund to come in to buy Manchester United. At least one. Now, everybody would probably go back to it when you had it with the DIC, Dubai, for example. When the Dubai rumours were coming, oh, Dubai want to buy United and blah, blah, blah. Dubai is a city within the UAE. They actually went bust. They had a major financial hit, and it was Abu Dhabi that ended up bailing them out for a couple of months until they regenerated funds and financing to then stabilise their city. And obviously we know Abu Dhabi own Manchester City, so there wasn't really going to be that sort of... It effectively broke the camel's back, really, if they were ever going to buy it. You've always had it with nations like Kuwait. They're not interested in buying in sports. They've got a big sovereign wealth fund, gas and oil reserves. They don't want to invest in sports. They're not that country. Beirut, there was sort of murmurings a couple of years ago that they were looking at maybe getting into the NFL or getting into football. They never have done. There's not been that leading desire to do it. Saudi Arabia was the big one. They've always wanted a football team. They've always wanted one. Even if Qatar didn't have one, and they were the only team in the Arab world to have a football team, they'd want that because they've got too much money not to have one. Is the problem? They've got too much money not to invest it into a team, and Newcastle's the one that they've ended up going for, but United was an option that they initially wanted. That was the one. But the Glazer family weren't prepared to sell for fully at the time, so they moved on. Time moves for no man. And at the end of the day, will there be a resolution anytime soon? I'll be honest, I don't think there will be, because Ratcliffe's offered them everything. And we're going to have to see now, if this drags on another month or two, I think then we could probably sit here and say that, what more can he do? He's done everything. There is nothing else. So for them just to accept something now would be trigger happy. It'd just be weird. There'd be a case to say that they shouldn't accept it rather than they should. Whereas with the Qataris, you can always sit there and say, well, they've said that this is the final bid, but with the people that they speak to and they let things out to put out there in the media, they've never once said, we're walking away. We'll leave the offer there, but we're walking away. They've never once said that. The one thing that they've always said, self-sustained, is we're not denying that we'll bid again, but we're also not denying that we won't. So really, it leaves the door open. And that's the way that I've come to the belief of it with the Qataris, is that they have the 6 there if they want to pay it, but they just don't value it at that. And if they don't value it at that, I don't think somebody should be forced to pay something that they don't think's valued at that. It's like when you go to buy a car. If you like a nice car or whatever, that's fine. But if you don't think it's worth that, you're not going to pay that, are you?
I think that's fair. Last 2 questions from, I think Sheikh has 2 questions for you, then we'll finish. Sorry. Sheikh says, question for Tom: will this supposed sale be wrapped up by Sheikh Jim November? Gonna be true or PR? And then he says, one more question. This was a long time ago, before the Glazers came. What happened with Colonel Gaddafi not buying United as he was hours away from getting it? I'm not sure how true that is, but yeah, those are 2 questions, Tom.
Yeah, well, probably to go on to answer the first one with it, in terms of will it supposedly sale wrapped up by Sheikh Jassim in November? Well, late October, November was, you're coming closer to the end of the final quarter of the financial year. I think a lot of business analysts, and I've got a couple of business friends that probably want to clarify that for me. I stand correct. I think it happens toward the beginning of November that you had the final quarter year of your financial turnover where you release it. So in United's case, they will release the financial figures towards the back end of October, November. And if they release it bang on the date that they're supposed to, then there's no sale. There's no agreement. But if they don't release it on those exact dates that they're supposed to, it means there's a deal or there's a negotiation going on. That's what it says, because you can't put out there what your final quarter figures are for the year, to then total it up for what you made for that whole year. You can't put it out there unless you then have the same basis of what a new owner would be buying the football club for. So in this case, you could have the Qataris agree a deal to buy United for 6 billion, but you're not allowed to release the figures out there, because they could come in and then wipe the debt away from United straight away, which then changes what the figures would be, because you don't have the interest payments to pay. So then United would make a profit, not a loss, because they're not having to pay the debt off year after year. So that's where you can say that if they don't make the figures public, then something's happening. There's a negotiation with the Qataris. There's a deal in place, agreed with Qatar, with Sir Jim, with whoever. something's happening. That's the long point of it. And effectively from there, if I'm being honest with you, if the Glazer family, I think, I think people sometimes forget they are human as well. If you've waited a year, you pay the Rain Group. They do pay the Rain. They have to pay the Rain Group to do what they've been doing for them, and the Rain Group shot themselves in the foot because they over promised the Glazer family, and they can't deliver on the promises. And the reason being is that the Rain Group had promised the Glazer family, "Oh, you'll have 6 bidders at this with a brilliant advertiser. Look what we did with Chelsea. You've got 2 people." And really, you've got 1 because the Qataris can only buy it. Ratcliffe hasn't got the money to buy it, or not at the actual price you want. So we've underachieved there, and we've also underachieved when we said that, well, we can get you between 6 and 8. Well, we want 8 then because we want the most money. Right, we're struggling just to get 6 guys. Nobody's even wanting to give us 6, so 8's out of the absolute water. There's no chance. So Rain overestimated on that. So I think anyway, the Glazer family, they're going to have a cut-off point themselves because, as I said, time's not on the side because of age. Time's on the side because of age, but they are human as well. I think they will want to accept something at some point, and there's only so far that you can take some people before they are aggravated enough to say, "Do you know what? Fuck this." Why? Because the Qataris could pull their offer now, and I could guarantee you by this time in October till the 31st of December, they could already have a deal in principle to buy Spurs, to buy West Ham, to buy Brighton. If you wanted to buy any of those teams that I've just mentioned there, you could have a deal in place probably by the end of the year. And that's how many months? That's all of October, November, December. That's 3 months. You could agree a deal to buy one of those football clubs in 3 months, but it might take you nearly a year to buy Manchester United. But again, Manchester United is the brand, the football club, the actual figure. It's everything that a lot of people love and adore. So you're going to wait for it. That's the problem. And Sheikh Jassim's a United fan, Ratcliffe's a United fan. They're going to wait for it if they get and one of them, there's got to be a winner and there's got to be a loser at some point. So the Glazer family will have to make that decision at some point. And again, the Qataris, they haven't bid a game for months. So to bid now, there'd be no point.
This takeover matter's a mess, man. It's a mess. It's a mess. It's a mess. But thanks again, Tom, and thanks everyone in the chat who's getting involved. We'll obviously keep you updated if there's any different news that comes in. But hopefully, fingers crossed, things get resolved in the end. Remember, guys, if you are new to the channel, I'm trying to like, share, and subscribe to Red Devil Studio. Follow us on Twitter. We are United X. Smash that like button, notification button. Make sure you follow Tom at TomJournalist1 for his updates as well. Have a nice day, everyone. Thanks for tuning in, and cheers. Peace.
Peace.